executive item. This is the Capital Projects Advisory Committee update. Visitor serving capital projects to support implementation of the Tourism Master Plan. Erin Casey will be presenting. Welcome,
That's a
Erin.
mouthful. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Erin Casey with the County Executive Office. Here to present this item to you today. I will present this item in 3 parts. I'll go over that with you here just shortly. First, I'll start with an overview on the county and county partnership with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. I think this is important to set context to the additional items I'll be covering, including a status update on public meetings that we co-convened with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association in early November. These meetings were to focus on the Tourism Master Plan priorities, revenue strategies in Eastern Placer County, and the Capital Projects Advisory Committee. And some of the feedback we received from those meetings is included in the proposed committee that you see before you today. And then finally, we've requested board action on the proposed committee, asking your board to approve the formation of the committee to recommend Tourism Master Plan priorities to your board, including visitor serving capital projects consistent with the Tourism Master Plan. Before I get into this in great detail, though, I'd like to start by thanking members of the community. This has been an ongoing process for us. We've been engaged with members of the community since earlier this year. Many of those community members have met with county staff, resort association staff and board, and also members of your board. And so their feedback has been essential to us developing what you see before you today. So I know some of them are here in the room, some are up in Tahoe, so just want to extend our gratitude for the community's participation in this process. Also want to acknowledge our partnership with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. I think Cindy Gustafson, the CEO, is here today on behalf of the organization. So we appreciate the ongoing partnership with them and their efforts with Placer County to bring this forward to your board. And then finally, I'd like to say thank you to your board. We have been meeting with you over the last several months, looking to you for guidance on this. And so we do appreciate your feedback, and I hope that what you see before you today really captures what we've discussed and some of the guidance you've provided over the last several months. So, the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association partnership formed in 1995 as an outcome of the Tourism Development Master Plan. The organization implements a robust marketing plan that includes visitor information services as well as conference sales, among other sponsorship programs that they manage. And they did advise your board on transportation and capital projects as well. They've partnered with the community to engage the community on the Tourism Master Plan over the years, and it also includes the North Lake Tahoe Chamber of Commerce. Earlier this year, we began contract negotiations. On April 1st, county staff submitted a budget and scope of work or desired scope of work to the organization. And in that request, there were some significant changes to what we had done in the past. We're looking for a proposal on marketing services, but a limited proposal for capital project and transportation development, as your board may recall. On May 3rd, the Resort Association presented us with a counter proposal, and then on May 19th, county staff met with the Resort Association's executive committee and staff and determined that the best next step would be to engage in facilitated sessions to identify areas of alignment and to develop a future partnership. You can see there were several additional meetings that were convened to really work this through and identify next steps. And some of the things that we identified that were important at the time were around, okay, why do we think we need to proceed with some of these changes? We agreed that it was important to ensure that the community was represented on the committee that was recommending projects to your board. It was diverse and broad and represented the several groups that encapsulate all of Eastern Placer County. And so that was important to us. Ensuring that the process was streamlined and efficient in terms of vetting projects and bringing those forward to your board, addressing any conflict of interest issues that we felt existed with the previous committee, and ensuring that the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association and Placer County continued to have a partnership working together on behalf of the community. Community feedback that we received during some of the earlier stages of these conversations include the following: to preserve the community voice. And I think that you'll see that the committee that we have before you today does in fact do that. There were concerns that by making changes to the partnership with the Resort Association, that there would no longer be opportunity for community members to weigh in on community needs or to recommend priorities to your board. I think you'll see within that committee that we've in fact captured that concern and addressed it. To slow the process of the proposed changes down, we did do that. If you may recall, we brought a 1-month and 6-month contract forward to your board with the Resort Association so that we would have time to convene these public meetings and formulate this committee and how it would work. To ensure transparency and accountability, maintain the partnership with the Resort Association, and then to continue public outreach on the process and the Tourism Master Plan. And that's what I'm here to share with you today, some of the outcomes of those public meetings.
And Erin, I'll just note that you missed one of your bullet points, which was to expand participation within Eastern Placer County.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, that's a very important one, in fact. So the partnership details that came out of our facilitated sessions included that we would work with the Resort Association to co-convene public meetings to review the Tourism Master Plan and its priorities. That plan was most recently approved by your board in 2015, and we felt it was important to engage the community around those priorities to see if things had changed, if that order priority had changed, or if there's anything missing from the master plan that people felt we should be including and considering. We also agreed to co-chair the committee that you see before you today to review and recommend capital projects to your board, and then also review funding strategies. The Tourism Master Plan currently identifies over $100 million in capital projects. And while we're making great strides each year to address those needs and implement those projects, significant funding gaps remain. And so we wanted to begin that conversation with the community around other revenue strategies that the community might be interested in, and then what would they like to see those funds allocated to. The press came to one of our first public meetings. That's what this captures here. You'll see on the right, I'm there. And then on the left, Adam Wilson is also there. He is the current chair of the Resort Association Board. This was actually a very important element of the public meetings that we convened. We wanted to ensure there was representation from both county staff as well as the Resort Association to engage and have conversations around these items. So just to give you a quick overview of the public meetings, we had 3 of them. They were convened in early November. We held one in Kings Beach, one in Tahoe City, and one on Donner Summit. We did this to ensure broad participation. The meeting objectives included reviewing Tourism Master Plan priority, and as I said earlier, wanted to ask the community, what's missing, what's next? How do we achieve some of our goals, understanding some of the challenges that we have? Develop the Tourism Master Plan Capital Projects Advisory Committee. So this committee has undergone several iterations and modifications, and so we wanted to bring what we had at that time forward to the community to see if there was anything that we might be missing. And the feedback we received there we have included. And then identify funding sources to implement the Tourism Master Plan. So the meeting format was, we started off with a quick 20-minute PowerPoint presentation that was given by myself and Cindy Gustafson. And then we had 3 stations where the community dispersed after watching the presentation to talk with county and Resort Association staff around these 3 areas. We also provided comment cards and feedback sheets so people could leave with us their feedback. They could share it with us personally, or they could leave it, which is where we were able to capture some of the data that we'll share with you today. So Station 1 was on the Tourism Master Plan, and we really focused in on the 4 focus areas identified within the plan. One is on visitor activities and facilities, and that focuses on trails, wayfinding, signage, snow removal, etc. Transportation, so expanding the TART services in our community, as well as bus shelters to support that service. Marketing services around destination marketing, conference sales, and visitor information and special events. And at the bottom, visitor information and support services. So now this includes a broad set of community priorities, including economic development, land development priorities, snow removal, traffic management, et cetera. So it's a bit of a catch-all for a variety of community needs. So these are a few graphs that we put together that reflect the Tourism Master Plan priorities by community, and these are by category as defined within the Tourism Master Plan itself. So on the left, you'll see in the blue, that represents transportation, and in the red, we have visitor information and support services. So in Kings Beach and in Tahoe City, they're fairly consistent there in the transportation and visitor information services in terms of priority. What's interesting from my perspective, though, is you note the Donner Summit area, that visitor information and support services ranked much higher than transportation did, or visitor activities and facilities, and I'll talk in a moment about why that is. But I also want to mention that marketing and sales, you'll see here, is also included in the Kings Beach and Tahoe City results. And when we talk about the Resort Association's marketing program, I want to add that it also includes visitor information services. It's far more expansive than what marketing program might lead you to believe. And so the results here actually show support for that program as well, because you can see that visitor information support services ranked very high. These are the Tourism Master Plan top 3 priorities that ranked within each community. And in Kings Beach and Tahoe City, you see again transportation ranking very high. So specifically, what does this include? This includes 30-minute service. People are quite interested in more frequent service in the community. Free transportation service ranked very high. Continuing to fund TART service was also included in that category. In the middle, in the blue there, you see economic development ranking quite high in Kings Beach and Tahoe City, and I'd like to add that that was specific to improved lodging. There was quite a bit of reference to that in the feedback sheets that we received around economic development activities. And then trails in the Kings Beach and Tahoe City area were also ranked quite high. Donner Summit, interestingly, is a bit different. You'll notice at the bottom there that economic development actually ranked very high in that community. And really the reference to economic development was different than what people in the Kings Beach and Tahoe City areas meant when they were talking about economic development. In the Donner Summit area, there's interest in infrastructure to support visitor services around a visitor center, restrooms, and parking. That community is really lacking in that area right now. Visitors come in off of I-80 into Soda Springs. Maybe this is your experience. You're not quite sure what's there. There's not a lot of signage, not a lot of parking, no public restrooms, and so there's a focus for that kind of economic development, those sorts of facilities in that community, which is unique from Kings Beach and Tahoe City. We also asked the community to provide us with any of their thoughts on priorities that aren't included in the Tourism Master Plan, and so that's what this chart reflects. We combined it with all of the meetings, and so we didn't separate these out by community, but you see that housing ranked very high, probably not a surprise to your board to hear that. Recreation facilities, so skate parks or dance parks or dance facilities was something that we heard, or indoor facilities where people could recreate in the winter if they didn't want to ski or the weather weren't very good. And then other transportation-related priorities, such as the Bay Area shuttle or hybrid and electric vehicles, that came up quite a bit also. So here's just a summary of the results. The top 3 priority categories were transportation, economic development, and trails. And as I mentioned already, the economic development priority areas were unique in Tahoe City, Kings Beach, or I should say Donner Summit was unique from the Tahoe City and Kings Beach feedback that we received. Station number 2 was on the Capital Projects Advisory Committee. I'll go through this quickly. There was, again, the community felt you need to continue to broaden that geographic representation and further diversify the committee. Interest in including small and large lodging, designated seats for SQUA and North Star, as well as an organization called the Donner Summit Association, and then adding additional areas of expertise around housing, environment planning, implementation, and public safety. Station number 3 on revenue strategies. We had several conversations with members of the community about this, and I'd say that the feedback we received is sort of all across the board. Willingness to consider a TOT extension or increase, or perhaps a T-bid, cross-jurisdictional T-bid, or just a larger, broader regional T-bid is what was reflected in the feedback sheets. Collecting TOT from properties listed on Airbnb and VRBO, which we are currently doing. A sales tax increase to support trails and transportation, gas tax, cannabis tax, and then some way to tax day trippers to Tahoe. So what do we do with all of this information? Well, the first thing we did is we included that feedback in the committee that you see before you today. And then I also wanted to point out some of the county initiatives that are currently underway that do address some of the other feedback we received, including the Parks and Trails Master Plan. the Housing Work Plan, and the Economic Incentives Program. We think that some of this feedback will also inform revenue strategies and potential voter surveys that we may choose to do here in the near future, as well as guidance on the committee that we're recommending to your board today. And now I will move on to the committee and talking with you briefly about committee objectives. So what is this committee tasked to do? The first is to recommend Tourism Master Plan priorities to your board. It will also review capital project applications that come forward from the community, ensure projects are consistent with Tourism Master Plan priorities, as well as leveraging state, federal, and local matching funds. This is something that we've been very successful at and want to continue with that. Hold public meetings to review projects and further engage the community, and then recommend strategies to implement these capital projects. And so it could be the case that the committee says, well, maybe we should be evaluating projects every 2 years, or perhaps there should be a threshold for projects that we evaluate on a 2-year basis, and then projects that we identify or review on an annual basis. Here is the proposed committee, and I think you have a copy of this in your board packet. You'll notice up at the top that the committee will be co-chaired by Placer County with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. There are 13 seats on this committee, and the committee will be making recommendations on visitor-serving capital projects directly to your board. You'll notice there, seat number 10, that we added a ski resort seat per the feedback that we received earlier in the public meetings, and we've identified which ski resorts would be appointing someone into that position down below. We've also added a lodging seat, which is seat number 11, again, in response to the feedback we received at the public meetings. We also have included as sideboards preference for one representative per organization. We did this to address some of the conflict of interest issues that we identified early in our discussions with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. Appointing organization must provide services in Placer County and also implement projects consistent with the Tourism Master Plan. And appointments may include board, staff, or community members. We'll leave it to the organizations to make that determination. Additional committee details, as I said already, participating organizations will represent businesses, residents, visitors, and implement projects consistent with the Tourism Master Plan. Members must live or hold a business license based in Eastern Placer County. The terms are actually staggered. There are 2- and 3-year terms to ensure committee stability. Eventually, all the terms will be 2-year terms. We just didn't want everybody coming off the committee at the same time. Meeting locations will rotate to ensure broad community participation, and all appointments will be approved by your board. Committee formation, just a quick schedule. The North Lake Tahoe Resort Association's Board of Directors approved the committee that you have before you today on December 6th. Today, your board will be taking action on the proposed committee, we hope. And then on the 15th, we will submit a letter to the organizations who are approved to appoint the members in late January. We'll also release the application for the at-large Resort Association and county appointed seats on the 15th, and we anticipate bringing the appointments forward to your board by February of 2018, with the committee then convening following that in late February. Also, I know there's been some interest in the grants process associated with this committee, so I just wanted to provide your board and the public with a bit of an update on that. Grant applications will be released in late December, and applications will be due in February. The committee's first meeting will be in February around the same time, so those two things will converge, and that's been our goal. We didn't want to delay the grants process as the committee was forming. Application review will begin March 2018, and we anticipate bringing projects forward to your board in late April or early May of 2018, ahead of the end of the fiscal year. I also want to add that we have received some additional feedback since we posted our staff report and the final proposed committee. The first is that to add the Squaw Valley Business Association to the list of organizations there that could appoint someone in the business association seat. Initially, we had excluded them because it was our understanding that they are very closely connected to Squaw Valley Ski Resort, and so their interests would be represented in that seat. But it's become clear to us in light of the feedback that that's not necessarily the case, and the organization would like to be acknowledged and participate and have the ability to appoint alongside the other business associations. And so that is something that that staff has considered and would recommend that your board consider modifying or changing within the final committee. We also received some feedback on the Fire District, Placer County Sheriff's Office, and other emergency service personnel in participating. We felt it was important to look at all organizations and ensure that they were implementing projects, capital projects, consistent with the Tourism Master Plan. And so that is the reason why these organizations were excluded from the list of special districts that would be appointing someone. It is the case that they could review applications because all meetings will be public meetings, and we have the opportunity to share grant applications with them if they're interested in looking at them from that perspective. But we're certainly open to considering any modifications your board might like to consider in response to this feedback. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions that your board may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent presentation, Erin. Any questions or comments for Erin from any member of the board? I see no lights lighting up, so I will open it up to the public. Any member of the public? I'll start here in Auburn. Welcome.
Thanks, Jennifer, and members of the board. Cindy Gustafson, CEO of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. And I wanted to just come out and again, thank Erin for a very thorough presentation. I don't need to add to that, just to tell you that our board is in full support, as Erin mentioned, and we really thank you and the county CEO's office and staff for the great relationship working through this from the time I started with the organization. So on behalf of our board, thank you very much, and happy to answer questions if there's other comments that come up.
Kirk.
Yeah, I do have a quick question, Cindy. So your board took action on the proposed advisory committee as it's represented in our packet, correct?
Yes.
And of course, that last slide showed possible additions. Your board has not taken a position on those possible additions.
No, and I did get a chance. I did try to reach out to our board chair because he represents North Star. Erin briefed me on the Squaw Valley request, and obviously for those of you who don't know, the two largest corporations in the ski industry in the United States of America are on my board. So try to make sure that I'm talking to everybody in that. And he wasn't able to get back to me yet. So I don't know if North Star would have a similar request or not.
Right.
Some of their businesses are independent, others are not. So I'm sorry I can't.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear that what was adopted by your board is what is represented, absent those last suggestions we saw on the slide. Thank you very much.
But they were aware of some of those comments.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Other public comment? A familiar face. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the members of the board. My name is Pat Malberg, and I'm representing the Donner Summit Association. You saw it on the slide up there. It's a new organization, and we felt very strongly that we needed to be included in this whole conversation about TOT funding and all that. And we were so gratified with the fact that there was a meeting up at Donner Summit. Yay! And we all got to say our 2 cents, and much of it was included, and we're really grateful to Erin and her wonderful organizational skills, and to Jennifer for making this possible. We look forward to the process, to participating in it, and we hope we'll have a very exciting project to present to you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments here in Auburn? Okay, let me go to Tahoe. Any public comment on this in Tahoe?
Hello, Board of Supervisors, Madam Chair, J.T. Chevalier from the Tahoe City Downtown Association. And I just wanted to first come up and thank Placer County and the NLTRA for engaging our community in some rich dialogue and presenting that feedback to you. We are, as the Tahoe City Downtown Association, in full support of this committee structure and look forward to having this go forward. And in addition to that, we did receive some feedback from our Board of Directors, and they asked that the Board of Supervisors and the committee consider a minimum threshold in which the committee could possibly approve funding without maybe necessarily having to take it to the full Board of Supervisors for approval. But that was the only piece of feedback that we did not see reflected in the presentation. It's just because it came so late in the process. But once again, thank you, Placer County, Erin, Jennifer, as well as Cindy Gustafson for engaging us as the business associations and including us as we develop this process moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, JT.
Madam Chair, before he steps
Supervisor
away.
Euler?
Yeah.
JT, please come back. Supervisor Euler has a question for you.
Yeah. Could you give us a for instance, I like the idea, or I'm intrigued by the idea that you raised of a minimum threshold that the committee could propose that wouldn't require board approval. Is there a proposed threshold associated with that? And can you give me a for instance of the kinds of projects or the kinds of expenditures that you think would fit within that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the minimum threshold that's been discussed, at least amongst our board, was between possibly $15,000 and $25,000 and below, in which could be approved for this committee structure. And these are kind of fall in lines with some smaller capital improvement projects that we might have in Tahoe City. Our gateway lighting in our downtown corridor could be one of those. It's small. It was about a $10,000 budget this year, and so kind of smaller items and capital projects that fall kind of under that threshold is more what we were considering in regards to that amount.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
JT. I think that was
Thanks.
Any other public comment there in Tahoe? Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Supervisor, and the rest of the board for taking up this item. And I'd like to just say, I'd just like to commend the county on their work, Erin and Cindy specifically, and just maintaining the local representation on the advisory board for how TOT funds are distributed. I'm glad to see that there's consistency between the makeup and structure of the CIT committee with the new proposed CAP committee. I think it's a good idea to have 2 seats available for special districts. I think that connects this process of distributing the TOT funds to elected officials, which reflects the will of the electorate, and so I think that's a good addition. And with this, I'll just just a heads up that our board will likely form a Parks and Rec subcommittee to better position Squaw Valley as well as the Public Service District to receive some of the TOT funds. And 2 other comments: just support the ongoing focus on the maintenance, snow clearing, and construction of new trails. And want to commend the late addition of the Squaw Valley Business Association to potentially sit on that board to advise how those funds are spent. Thank you.
And Mike, while I know who you are, I'm not sure everyone does. Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure. Mike Geary, General Manager of the Squaw Valley Public Service District.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comment there in Tahoe on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to Auburn. Any additional public comment on this item here in Auburn? Okay, I don't see any. Any questions or comments from any member of the board? I don't see any. I am just going to make a few comments on this. I'm really thankful for county staff and Resort Association staff for working so hard and so diligently on this and really working to expand the footprint of this proposed committee, both geographically but also in terms of interests. One of the reasons, or I would say actually the genesis of this coming forward, is that I was certainly getting feedback from certain interest groups and geographic regions that they didn't feel as if they were being included in the process that we had before, and was there some way to improve upon that process? And I think that's what we're seeing in front of us today. As to Supervisor Euler's question and clarification about what action did the Resort Association Board take, I appreciate your comments around, the concern about adding something new that has not been vetted by the Resort Association Board. What I would like to suggest is that we move forward with adopting this today, but maybe ask the question, should we go back to the Resort Association Board to take that temperature as well as ours about adding some of these additional groups? I'll just tell you my thoughts on some of the proposals. I think, potentially adding some additional business associations, whether it's Squaw Valley or North Star or others, does make some sense potentially. As to adding the first responders, whether it's PCSO or fire districts, they really don't work to implement the tourism master plan. And so while I think there is a very robust role for them to play in the public process, I don't think adding them to the board makeup makes any sense. And I say that as a wife of a Tahoe first responder, so sorry, honey, if you're listening. In terms of adding Department of Public Works and Facilities, the county has some opportunities, again, on that front. If we chose a county seat that we wanted to assign to, say, someone from DPFW, that's something we could do that way. So I think calling out a specific designated seat for them does not make sense. We do have opportunities around that. I think for future discussion, having some conversations both at the Resort Association and at our board and with the committee around looking at some minimum thresholds makes some sense. I'm a little uncertain if 15 to 25K is a minimum that I would be comfortable with. It sounds like some big numbers to me, given that these are limited funds and that many of them could get eaten up pretty quickly with a series of small projects that might never come in front of us. So I would like to see some more conversation around that before we moved forward with that. But those are all my comments. Supervisor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the threshold, sitting here thinking that through, I try to spend as much time as I can in the Tahoe region, being down here, representing down here. And it seems to me that we had a threshold and we weren't part of the decision that it would affect my ability to understand what's going on up in the Tahoe area. So that's just my initial comment regarding that.
Supervisor Euler?
Yep. First, appreciate everything that you identified in terms of how you would react to the proposal to add those 3 additional layers or additional points of input. If we are going to consider the Squaw Valley Business Association, are we considering simply adding them as one of making them an additional business association that would be eligible to rotate into seats 1 and 2, as opposed to them having their own special seat? They would simply be an additional.
Yes, that would be the change. Yes.
Then I would, to Cindy's point, I would think it would be on us to also reach out to North Star, get their thoughts. If that were to be the case, I think it would be important to coordinate the rotations between the Business Association representation and the ski resort representation, so that in any given year you don't have 2 North Star or 2 Squaw Valley on there at the same time. And then as far as the threshold's concerned, perhaps it might make more sense, and I agree with your concern about not wanting to jump into that right now, given that it was kind of a late app. I can see maybe a more important threshold than a dollar amount being a timeliness issue. Mm-hmm. You run up against something that the Resort Association folks all of a sudden say, oh my God, we just learned that this is going to happen in the next 2 weeks and we really need to spend a few bucks in support of it or accommodating for it. And therefore they have, and our board wouldn't have the opportunity to meet and all the rest. They have the ability to make a decision on a timeliness basis, maybe as opposed to a dollar amount basis. So, but again, I think that's an important conversation for you folks to have, flesh that out, and then bring it back to our board to say this is our recommendation on how we be authorized to spend up to a certain amount based on these kinds of conditions.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Euler.
Supervisor Wygant.
And nothing to add except to emphasize that I was exactly where you were on the capital. Strikes me that capital projects tend to have a long lead time anyway, most of the time. But I hadn't thought through it enough to think about where we might want to have that quick response trigger. So I want feedback. It could be very well, maybe we have a combination of threshold and time frame. I don't want to pass up any great opportunities, but I'd like some more analysis on that, I think.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. And I can tell you that previously the Resort Association had allocated $100,000 for the CIT committee to consider when opportunities came up at other times of year. Those recommendations were still brought forward to your board, but it was still something that was exercised to accommodate for that. So I think we can do another level of analysis to see what might be appropriate, considering the fact that your board might not be approving something like that, and bring a recommendation forward for you.
Great, and just if I, just part that I didn't complete with my thought is because at the end, I think we just want to make sure that there's board accountability.
Yes.
But we don't need to take 6 months to pre-approve
Right.
everything, and we want to be nimble, but make it clear that we're actually responsible for the public funds.
Right. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for that clarification. I think that's probably the most germane piece of this conversation, that these are public tax dollars that we're talking about, and our obligation to make sure they are spent appropriately, and that is the oversight that we have at the end of the day. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, we're being asked to approve the formation of a Capital Projects Advisory Committee, including committee seats, eligible organizations, terms, and appointing organizations. I'm going to give that one to Holmes and Duran. Sorry, Wygant. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair,
Thank you
members
all
of the
very
board.
much for
Appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Great work, everyone. All right, we are going to move to our department items.